And here we are again. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 17, if I am keeping track correctly, of the Center Ring TCR. Your favorite esports podcast coming to you live, pre-recorded from an undisclosed location. My name is Tim. I'll be one of your hosts for the evening. The other host, he is Brandon. Brandon, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Ready to get this show on the road.
You ready to have the best episode yet?
Yeah. I'm going to be interested to see if we can keep this underneath an hour for all those people that think it's too long.
Probably not. Because even when we have an interview that should realistically take up 20 minutes of the show, we still go an hour of just us.
Yeah.
But we'll try our best. We'll try shooting for 45.
Yeah, we'll get time steps in there for people like Decency that likes to complain about the length of the show.
Which is exactly what the goal was when we started. We're 45 minutes. If we can get 45 minutes of roughly 3 topics in, we'd be happy. And at that time, 17 episodes ago, we were like, man, that will never happen. And now we're struggling. We're struggling to get under an hour. But regardless, that is what we're here for, though. We're here to entertain. We're here to discuss, hopefully spark some thoughts, some discussion on yourself. Leave a comment on our Twitter at the Center Ring. You can always leave a comment on our YouTube channel. Go to our website, because I really don't know how to link you to our...
That's the easiest way until...
I don't know how to direct them to YouTube, because we don't have a fancy custom URL just yet. So go to our website, tcr.gg, and that will get you to all of it. iTunes, past episodes, everything there.
Twitter, YouTube.
Let us know what you think of the show. And not just of the show, though. We're discussing this to hopefully spark some deeper conversations in esports. Let's kind of get into episode 17, though, of TCR, the Center Ring. We had tons of going on in the week. We had, C9, or Cloud9 N0thing, I should say. He kind of broke some silence on his Twitch channel / YouTube and went into a little bit more in-depth story on how the whole Stewie 2K, Get Right, how all that went on behind the scenes. So we pulled a bunch of audio for that, and we will discuss kind of our comments on his comments there. There was actually a really good article on Evo, the future of Evo, the current state of Evo. There was a really good article I felt written on the Daily Dot by a Mr. Steven Jurek is how I'm going to say his last name. I apologize if it's Jurek, but I'm going to go with Jurek. Very good article written by that gentleman there. So we wanted to discuss it kind of in detail, kind of using his article as a launching pad. Of course, we will always end the show with the micro, your favorite segment of kind of news stories, non-news stories.
News, not news.
Things that we just don't have time to discuss or the material to go in depth on. And to start the show, though, as we typically do when there's a big Counter-Strike Go tournament, I feel like we always start the show off with it. And why make this week any different? So we had CSGO had their DreamHack Leipzig tournament. They're basically the first DreamHack event of the year. Still a young year and everything there, but we had some big tournaments there. Kind of let's jump around. Obviously, I have the finishings here, and obviously we would normally start with the last to first. And the last one, though, is such a doozy. I feel like if we discuss it first, it's going to be a while, but why not? Virtus Pro, dead last in this tournament. I stood in this seat, or sat in this seat. I could have stood, I guess. I sat here, though, last week, looked you in the face, Brandon, and said, I want to see Fnatic play Virtus Pro because I feel like Virtus Pro would be the one team that can give them a run for their money. My confidence was in VP last week. That confidence is gone. In fact, my VP sensor is on full red alert that I think out of the big scene, the big 5 in Counter-Strike, that's going to have to be the team to make the next change.
I don't think they're going to change anything.
I don't think they will either because it's VP and I feel like they're very stuck in their ways. And
I mean, they lost a best of 1 to Mouse Sports and then lost a best of 3 to Dignitas 2-1. Is that what it?
2-0. Or no, wait. Yeah, 2-1 to Dignitas. Yes.
And their second loss was in overtime, 22 rounds to 20.
So you don't think getting last place in this tournament, where SK Gaming, Mouse Sports, and FaZe came up of top?
All right, Dignitas is not bad. They're not top 3, top 5.
I'm not saying any of those teams that are ahead of them are bad, but I'm just saying...
Right, but if you take a best of one, granted, they got dumpstered in that best of one by Mouse Sports. I mean, a best of one, just about anything can happen, right? I mean, we've talked about that before. The best setup is a best of 3 single elimination, in my opinion, and I think in yours as well.
Yeah, so anything can happen in a best of one, especially in a game where in CSGO, like the one against Mouse Sports, I believe, was on Dust 2, which is a very aim-friendly map, to where if you're a team that prides themselves on their aim game, which Mouse Sports is one of them, you're going to have issues on Dust 2. So yes, I understand where that can come into play, and a best of one can really skew the way if you're just looking at the standings. But still, VP coming in last is probably not the way they wanted to start their year.
No, definitely not. Most definitely not.
And even then, like looking here, I have like their whole list of recent tournament plays there in front of me. The last time they won first, or even for that matter, placed above third place, would have been at the CEVO Season 8 finals.
That's what I was thinking, CEVO, yeah.
And we all remember that tournament. They beat Mouse Sports in the finals, but that tournament had no, what anyone would consider a tier 1 team.
Right.
So that was the last time they won first. After that, it was the Crown Counter-Strike Invitational.
In Australia, right?
In Australia.
Yeah.
Which was up against other Oceanic teams there.
Yeah.
So that was another kind of gimme. I remember we were saying, like,
why are they playing in all these small tournaments?
We like Virtus Pro, but why are they constantly in these small tournaments? Obviously, it makes sense from their point of view, but from a fan's point of view, for someone who likes to ask the question why,
it seems so strange to think about that, because like you were talking about, anytime you see VP up against one of the top, 5 teams, you feel like they always have a chance to win. Like they look like they belong there.
I mean, they're in the discussion for top 5 easily.
Yeah.
And yet, if you look at their results, it doesn't reflect what other top 5 teams have, like a Fnatic, or at this point, Na'Vi, which I remember months ago when we started this show, our kind of picks for which top teams are probably the first to go. Na'Vi on me was, remember I had that discussion where, Na'Vi, they're top 5 now, but they can kind of be replaced. And now they're making me, stick my foot in my mouth because they're in the top 2.
They've been finishing consistently high. They do seem to struggle. They're kind of the opposite of VP. They seem to struggle against some of the top teams later on in the tournaments, but seem to kind of feast on.
They can at least get
the lower
to the top
tiered, lower tier teams. So,
and of course, Na'Vi ended up winning this one. If you hadn't noticed, they, for the most part, though, I mean, they didn't lose in groups. They dominated in groups, really. They beat SK 16-3. They beat FaZe, former G2, which we will discuss in a little bit, 16-9. So Na'Vi, again, never really had an issue on their group, went all the way to the finals and ended up beating Luminosity, who, can we say Luminosity is a surprise anymore? I think they lost the right for that, right?
Guardian, after playing LG, stated that Luminosity was a top 5 team in his opinion.
For a perfect segue to let you know on how perfect our brainwaves work, I actually have the audio of Guardian saying that. So why don't we just play that and then let him tell the listeners for himself.
There we go.
We knew what can we expect from them. It was either a slow game or either like rushy game that would push a lot of positions and stuff. So we knew what can we expect, but yeah, they were skill-wise pretty good, and they were like catching us in our mistakes. So it could have gone wrong way, but yeah, we somehow managed to win the train. But yeah, I would say it's skill-wise they're tier 1 team, and pretty hard to play them, and yeah, that's it.
So when Guardian is saying that you're tier 1, I think you lose the
underdog title.
Yeah, and like no one is like, hey man, you made it to the finals. Good job. We'll see you next time maybe. At this point, expectations are set for your team. And I feel like Luminosity's expectations have been set.
I don't disagree. Fallen really showed up. I still don't know how much, a player like Taco, who they just recently had to go on the record defending. I don't know how much more he can offer. But I will say the thing I'm most impressed with LG is that everyone on that team seems like they really want to be there and they really want to win and they really want to be LG, which is kind of refreshing to see some people stand so strong for their organization.
Well, I think there's also that I think goes deeper than just an organization in the sense of they are Brazilian, they're from Brazil. And that tends to come with a lot of passion. I mean, just look at Brazil as a whole with their soccer teams, with international sports and things like that.
Right.
They constantly have a strong fan base, no matter where the event is going. Brazilians are very
loyal.
Good. Yes, very loyal, very good fans. Even when they're down, they find a way just to be yelling at the other team. Like, we're upset that you beat our team. We're not upset that our team lost. We're upset at you for beating them. And I feel like that's kind of how they take that. And the players take that in, though, to the match with them. You see them playing. You see them cheer. They do like a little hoorah thing before they start the match. And I think that all comes from their fans.
Yeah.
I really think the support on Twitter and everything, I think they feed off of all of that.
I do agree. Every time they cut to LG during the game, like, they always seemed very animated, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's refreshing to see that because, I mean, you just heard Guardians English, and this isn't a slight to any of the EU teams or anything like that, but they're obviously just not going to be quite as forthcoming with emotion. So
that's Luminosity. I think like you said it best. The underdog card is revoked.
No more underdog.
Expectations are set. You are considered a tier 1 team from Guardian, who I think is the only approval you really need. Team Dignitas, they were to me the surprise one here. There was 2 teams that actually had to qualify for this tournament. That was Dignitas and Mouse Sports. Mouse Sports, I thought, played really well. Actually, if you wanted to look at a team's performance that doesn't really match up with where they finished, because they did finish 6th in the tournament, I think Mouse Sports, though, their actual performance was a lot better than the results. But Dignitas, on the other hand, they played really well. This was actually their first big LAN that I can recall since their new roster change, since Pimp and everyone left. I think this is the first significant tournament with that new roster. So they were kind of actually talking there where, they really felt like they had nothing to lose. They were just there to get their feet wet with this new roster and everything there. But this is actually their highest finish all the way since the Gfinity series back in June of last year. So they've had a lot of downtime. And for them, like I know you said they were good, but they had a lot of downtime in between then. So I think them finishing 3rd, they couldn't ask for anything else. They finished right above Astralis. Is that how we're all agreeing to say that?
Astralis, yeah.
Okay. So they finished above Astralis. I feel like Astralis, it's TSM, former TQM. Now Astralis.
I really feel like they missed the boat on that TQM thing. Anyway.
I know Thorn was saying that they choked and they were having a bad tournament, but there's always that one team that's going to knock out or, that's always going to finish above, and Team Dignitas was that team in this tournament. Yeah, it was surprising to see Virtus Pro finish so low, so that probably didn't help anyone's chances. Maybe they were hoping on Virtus Pro cleaning up a little bit there. But after winning groups, Astralis didn't lose any in the groups. They came out of groups 2-0.
And ended up dropping the first match to LG as they advanced on. Astralis did walk away with a little bit of money, though, which they're free to talk about now, being in a player-owned organization. I wonder if having that player-owned title is putting any extra pressure on them to perform, because it is kind of, the whole thing is kind of reflecting back on them now, not it's their
responsibility.
Thing,
yeah. They gave you the keys to the house, and this is your house now.
Yep. they've also, even as TSM and TQM, always had a game or two that they would kind of just underperform. That seems to be a recurring trend with that roster.
It's this semifinals curse of TSM.
Yeah.
I understand that you might say they want to choke. Can you really choke against Luminosity, though? Like we just said, they're not what people think of Luminosity anymore. They are a tier 1 team. They are in the discussion to be winning one of these tournaments, in the next coming of months. Would you be surprised if Luminosity ended up taking out Na'Vi? Because it seems like Luminosity and Na'Vi, I might do that for some after show homework to see their records against each other. I swear to God, they are always playing each other.
But
I'll have to look
enough.
that up.
I mean, the two maps that LG took on Astralis, Train, LG absolutely wrecked people on Train the entire tournament. The only time they lost to somebody on Train was against Na'Vi in overtime, 16-19. And as far as Overpass was concerned, Astralis got a little bit closer to him as far as finishing that goes. But I mean, you run into LG on Overpass and Train, which seem to be two of their strongest maps, you're probably going to have a bad time.
You mentioned it earlier, so I want to bring it up. The overtime that Na'Vi had to take to win this, yes, they ended up beating Luminosity 2-0, but I think this is another reason why the stats aren't always the whole story here. Because Na'Vi had to take both of those matches that they won in the grand finals to overtime. Both of them coming from behind.
I was going to say, it wasn't just going to overtime. Na'Vi had to claw back from down, I believe, on Cobblestone, where it was down 6-0 at one point, so to climb back in and to take it to overtime. And
for them winning 2-0, anyone looking at the stats would think, oh, they dominated. Luminosity gave it up. They choked in the finals. But again, everything doesn't have to be so black and white when it comes to these type of things. Just because you dropped 2 matches and you dropped it and they technically had to go to overtime and you lost in overtime, to me, that's not a choke. That's just the way it works. Somebody has to win.
Very true.
Choking would be losing a 5-on-1. That's choking to me. Losing to Na'Vi in the finals is not choking. Losing to Luminosity in the semifinals is not choking. So to me, I think overall, a pretty decent tournament.
It was good. It was a good way to start the year for Counter-Strike and to have a $100,000 prize pool at one of the first tournaments of the year. Congratulations to Na'Vi for taking half of it. Fallen has probably made back the money he spent to fly the Brazilian teams out to play in the other tournaments that he was paying for and housing them and feeding them. And
so you want to know something interesting too about this tournament? They actually had a Brazilian broadcasting team there too. Well, I don't know if they're there. But they definitely had Brazilian
broadcast stream.
So there you go.
They have their own ecosystem.
That's what I'm saying. So again, those Brazilian fans, just like that, Luminosity became relevant, 6 months ago? Actually relevant.
And now they've already got an entire broadcasting team.
And now they have a broadcasting team. They have their own Richard Lewis at Thorn. So there you go. Congratulations, Brazil. Have fun with that one. So moving on. Looking forward to the future of 2016 in this young CSGO year. N0thing from Cloud9 spoke on his Twitch channel. You can find it on his YouTube channel. Kind of the behind the scenes and how it all worked with them picking up Stewie 2K. Typically, I would not want to spend an entire topic of the show on one team, on one pickup. But because he was able to go so far, he was very open with it. I felt like it was worth pulling some of the audio, listening to that audio for people who didn't want to listen to the full 10 minutes. We have about 2 minutes of what I felt was worth it. And we can discuss that here. So the very first one that I wanted to play, this is at the very start. Actually, take it so far back. This is before Sean Garris even left the team. And there was rumors floating around that somehow Get Right was going to land on Cloud9. And then Sean Garris would move over to being a full-time coach for the team. So this is N0thing discussing that.
First thing we were thinking of is Get Right. Get Right was going to replace Sean, and we were going to get a coach. Sean was going to coach But if Sean didn't want to, we were still going to look for another coach and play with Get Right. But yeah, that's what we were going to do. Sean was going to coach, and we were going to have Get Right. So it was going to be pretty sick because we'd have had Get Right with the double lurk with me. We'd have had Shroud and Ryan just opening up rounds, and Sean would have done a good job there. Didn't happen. Through timing issues in various regions, it didn't happen.
Doesn't go very in-depth on what happened. I know when it finally broke down, I believe Get Right was the one who finally broke the silence, saying, no, I did try out with them, and it
Get Right had mentioned it on his Twitch stream as well, and that it just wouldn't work out. And I, from what I'm gathered from all the other conversations, especially they Get Right Twitch, and then that one, Get Right wanted to play with Sean Garris. Sean Garris wanted to play with Get Right, but Sean Garris did not want to play Counter-Strike anymore. Just kind of wanted out, nothing. I don't know if you've pulled, don't believe you've pulled any of the audio about his plans in the future, but
no, yeah, I left that part. That actually came right after there, where apparently he's in a
nothing said he's in a serious relationship. He's getting older. He doesn't know what he wants to do with the future, and I think he's kind of over the whole professional gaming thing.
He has a biochemistry degree.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
like I had no idea that Sean
he's
Garris,
a biochemist, and the dude is
that
rolling around
dude,
playing.
That explains his laugh, though. The degree explains the laugh. So at least we have closure to that.
Yeah, so he goes into that, and I think the timing issue is more about Get Right and Sean Garris wanting to play together than because Get Right had to wait for his contract to expire with Nip. I'm sure as hell they probably couldn't afford a buyout. They go into that later on, but I think that's what the timing issue came down to is those two wanted to play together, and when that didn't happen, Get Right was like, well, I might as well stay where I know.
And after that, so after they lost Get Right, they kind of started veering their way towards the NA scene. They dipped their toe in the Euro pool. They didn't get the one they wanted, so they started looking towards NA, teams like Liquid and things like that. So he kind of talks about Liquid and how that worked out and Hiko and everything here. I should mention that this is live on his Twitch, so you'll hear some notifications in the background because nobody mutes their Twitch stream when they want to give a speech.
Like the only other person, like you could think of as like a Hiko or a Nitro. Well, what did we do? We looked at Liquid's things. They have no buyouts or something. They had they couldn't or the buyout was so insane. Or I don't want to give away their personal contract info, but basically we couldn't pick up anyone from Liquid. The only person we could have picked up was Fugly, and I'll get back to that. We started trying out people, and we thought of Stewie during the summer, hey, this kid's gonna be pretty good. I wonder when he'll develop into that player.
So he goes into what I find actually. Let's backtrack. What I find interesting about all these that you'll find out is Stewie was not their first pick. I don't even think it was their second or third pick. I think they thought about Stewie, and then as time grew on and options became less and less, they realized, and I don't want to say they settled for Stewie, I think they realized the potential that Stewie has for the team. In the situation, again, he's mentioned it's all timing. I think timing and situations, they realize that Stewie is what's going to fit best for the team now.
I think the thing I took away from that portion of the discussion wasn't that Cloud9 was having a hard time getting players, was that all these players Cloud9 wanted were in contracts that couldn't be broken. And I was actually kind of happy to hear that NACS players have contracts that are, lucrative enough to want to be locked into and stay in and not worry about hopping teams every 2 hours, as is the typical CS teams. It sucks for Cloud9 because when Sean left, there's Stewie 2K to pick up.
Also, he touched on Fugly there. I did not pull the audio. He basically mentions that it just didn't work out. They
said Fugly was
Fugly.
Available, but his role didn't fit with the team.
Yeah, they liked him. He was good. He was smart. It just didn't fit with the double lurker role. So they moved Shroud over to be a lurker, and it just didn't fit logistically with the team. So after all that, he goes out to talk a little bit more about the buyouts and issues that they were running into with other teams.
All these up-and-coming players, all the veteran players that you'd say pick up from NA, we couldn't really pick up. Everyone had huge buyouts, so the closest we got to like any other like top NA current player was, I guess, Tarek. But then, as you guys know, it was just one of those things where we were trying to see if the situation fit between orgs, and the legal side of it kind of got in the way.
So again, that's the second time he brings up legal and buyouts and everything like that, just kind of prohibit them more so from wanting to go the route that they had originally planned. I know Tarek on CLG, there's been a lot of people in my discussion of friends that wanted to see him on Cloud9. But again, it's like you said, it is nice to know that before all this was released, I felt like people almost made fun of Cloud9 for going after Stewie, thinking that that's the only one they wanted. But this does help shed light that no, I mean, they looked at all their options.
It's the same thing you run into any sport. There's going to be people that are available, and there's going to be people that you want but aren't available. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So
going in there then, looking at the size of availability, he kind of touches on this, and he actually brings up the NA-EU comparison here.
Anyways, we were thinking about this, and I was like, okay, well, Stewie is someone who, like, obviously the community, like, we talked about picking up Get Right, everyone's going to give a shit picking up Stewie. Well, the thing is, like, the one problem with the NA scene is their talent's so spread thin. Like, we have 8 teams in North America, whereas all the other countries have, like, Fnatic and NIP in Sweden, Virtus Pro, and maybe one other team in Poland, Astralis and Dignitas in Denmark. And obviously it's because of the population size. But what that does is it creates a lot of cliques in North America. So now you're looking, and it's not egos. Everyone's like, this is just a North American problem. No, if Sweden was our size too, it'd be the same fucking thing. I've hung out with all the European CS players. They do have better teamwork, but everyone always says, like, all these NA issues are just NA issues. A lot of them are fucking just human issues. It's not just NA issues.
So I think that actually, you can hear his frustration with the NA-EU comparison, which I feel like anyone in NA is probably, anyone in North America is probably tired of hearing that comparison when it comes to CSGO or any esport for that matter, because now it's just turning into a giant esport feud of EU versus NA.
Right.
But I've even brought this up before with that, where I even brought up last week. It shouldn't be that, because look at Fnatic. You have all these teams making fun of, or all these fans making fun of North American teams, where Fnatic is the Swedish team, and they're dominating every other nation's teams. So Denmark is sitting here basically piggybacking off of Fnatic's success as far as being EU. Now, I get a lot of it's kind of like...
A lot of it comes from the American attitude that, we're better than everybody else.
I agree. There's a lot of it there, because he even brings up later that I didn't pull the audio that, like, look at last year. It's not about skill. We actually had a successful tournament here and there. But again, I don't think you're fooling anyone that North American teams
and it might even
finish up top.
And it might even be the fact that when Richard Lewis and Thorin decide to crap on NA Counter-Strike, they get a nice big healthy rise out of the NA CS scene on Reddit. It's for a country that watches as much Counter-Strike esports as we do. We don't really have anybody to truly root for that's, like truly competitive. And the problem is like the only team that would be truly competitive in a point of view is having a team at the level of like Fnatic.
Well, and then don't you feel also, though, like just with the NA argument that until a team reaches something like Fnatic status, everyone will still make that joke?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We are going to have to win major after major to earn any credibility in the scene.
Right, so there's a reputation now. So you can have a team that will come in and win a major or even 2 majors in a year, but the moment they lose to Dignitas or Mouse Sports in a CEVO Pro Series game, it's, oh boy, here goes the NA collapse again. There's that reputation with it now.
But I just don't want to act like, okay, well, this is just him crying wolf because he's NA. He does bring up a good point that there is a lot more pieces of the pie that all have to go to individual teams on this one.
Right.
There are a lot more teams in NA that, just the geographically, you have people who only want to play on people on West Coast, and you have people on East Coast who only want to play in people on East Coast. Or even then, it's just, in LAN tournaments, finding the talent might be a little bit more difficult. Again, not
I mean-
excuses. I'm just stating the facts that geographically, North America tends to be a little bigger.
It is a little bigger, and it is very much more cliquish, as nothing puts it, because everybody wants to be the best, but they want to be the best on their own terms. Nobody wants to make
A super team.
Yeah, Thorn 2 months ago released what he said would be his NA dream team as of November 2015, and that was Cutler, Tarek, Shroud, Skadoodle, and Hiko, right? But the problem is all of those, Skadoodle and Hiko, and then you Cutler and Tarek, Skadoodle's on. I always get Skadoodle and Shroud mixed up.
The same team.
Skadoodle and Shroud?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're same team.
And then Hiko on Team Liquid. It's all spread out, and nobody's gonna make the sacrifice
To leave their
teams
take
to
their
go
risks.
make a new one.
Which is understandable. I think of like, to totally date ourselves, when we were in high school like 10 years ago. The town that we grew up in had 4 high schools and all the football teams sucked. The town next to us had 1 high school and they won state every year.
Yep. It's the same thing, yeah.
So when you have to spread the talent out more, it's a natural thing that's going to happen. I did pull one more piece of audio. Again, this is C9 N0thing, kind of going behind the scenes. He said it on his Twitch and YouTube on the whole Stewie 2K signing and everything like that. This next piece of audio that I'm bringing up is actually, I find, one of the more interesting and more reassuring to all of the doubt and everything there, and them claiming Cloud9 had nothing to do or knowing what to do with this.
So we looked around and said Stewie's someone who's unproven, inexperienced, but he's got these qualities. So what we did is we said, listen, we're going to give him a trial contract, take the pressure off him, tell him like, no, this is your trial. We're not going to cut you after the first LAN. We're not going to cut you after the first match. Like, none of that. We're going to give you a fair trial, and then we're gonna give it a chance.
So after all the hate of that they were receiving, saying, what are they doing? How no one knows what the upside for this is going to be, we said it's going to be interesting because they have to give him a leash on this one, just because they really did sign the unknown.
We talked about a time frame, didn't we?
Yeah,
Within
that's what I'm
6
saying.
months or so, yeah.
They have to give him at least a 6-month window to see where he's at, because they are dealing with the unknown here. They don't know how he's going to perform with a solid team, with an in-game leader like Nothing, who said he's going... Nothing said in one of the audios that I didn't pick, where he's basically putting the team on his back. He's going to take all the pressure in the performance of the team, since Nothing now is the new in-game leader for the team. And listening to it, man, it got me excited, especially as someone who finds himself more of a Cloud9 fan, because just listening to Nothing, I feel like they're not stupid. They realize the situation at hand. They realize that Stewie 2K did come with some baggage as far as public, reputation and things like that. He, quote unquote, a pug star, doesn't perform well at LANs. He literally fell asleep on his other team. And I think they realize that. But again, after going through Get Right, after going through Liquid and CLG and just not having the luck that they were hoping for, I don't view Stewie 2K as a settle. I don't feel like they settled for him. I feel like they realized we can't just go for the next best. We have to find something that's going to work for this team, and the potential upside with Stewie 2K is better. Because he even mentioned how, he's coachable.
He did say that all of the negative things people talk about Stewie 2K are not necessarily true. That he is coachable. He doesn't have a bad attitude when he's getting criticism and things like that. I don't know if it was Nothing that said it. It may have even been in that video, talking about everyone complains about the NA talent pool being so shallow, but when a team like Cloud9 goes out and tries to grab a player and help them develop and make an actual professional player out of them, everybody's like, why the hell did you do that? You could have had X, whoever instead. So I'm actually really impressed at Cloud9, and like you said, this video from Nothing kind of gives everyone, or should give everyone, a lot more confidence in what Cloud9's doing, because they definitely seem to be in the right mindset with it.
Well, and he even said this is a trial contract, and they're not hiding that fact from Stewie.
Right.
They're saying, hey, look, dude, we want you on this team, But you have to realize where we're coming from on this, where we can't sign you to the big boy contract yet. Like, you are a unproven talent, so let's see what happens. Do you have the skills? Of course you have the skills. Let's see if you have the skills to play on a team in the upper pro level. So I don't think signing him to do you really think that they could sign anyone after hearing this? Like, who were they going to sign that was just going to skyrocket them into the top tier teams? There's nobody. Nobody was going to sign with him that was going to make that big of a difference. So I think taking this approach where he said, hey, give us 6 months. Look, don't freak out if we don't win a few tournaments here and there. Check back with us in July or so, and then see how we feel about him. Yeah, if he has some bad tournaments, okay, who doesn't have a bad tournament? He even mentioned in this that one thing that they're going to work on is with Shroud. Kind of have Shroud shake away from some of his, what's the word? Pug
habits.
Yeah. So he even said it's not just Stewie 2K on this team that needs work. It's not just Stewie 2K who's a pug star. We all are pug stars, and that's something that we have to break away from and focus on. He mentioned that the gaming house that Cloud9 is buying, Stewie 2K is not moving in there.
He is not.
He is not moving in there.
I thought he was. Something about grades first.
Okay, so he didn't mention grades or anything in this, but he did mention that they're not moving him in there right away because you never know how people are going to react in a gaming house.
We talked about that.
I mean, they could hate each other.
Yeah. 5 days in and you already want to, somebody doesn't throw away their pizza boxes and you want to murder someone.
Right. You want to have that intensity of a major and then go to live with somebody. Like, you have to have some time away. But
I'm curious if Stewie 2K knew all of the information that no-thing kind of just let out in that video. As if I were in Stewie 2K's shoes, I feel like that would give me a lot to prove. But they've basically went through this entire laundry list of players looking for somebody to join, and they eventually were like, okay, well, Stewie 2K, I guess, is, we'll make him work. We'll mold him into a professional player. You add that on top of all of the kids posting on the Reddit talking about how awful he is. Like, he's got a lot to prove right now. He's gonna have a big chip on his shoulder to show, or he's gonna have to show that he belongs.
You could cherry pick what no-thing said and make it look really bad on Stewie's part.
True.
Saying, hey, look, we went to Get Right. We went to Liquid. We went to CLG. No one was available. What do you want from us? We picked the only guy who was, and it was Stewie. If you really wanted to twist his words and make it seem like that, you definitely could. The opportunity's there.
This is an esports show. Of course I'm going to.
But I don't think that's what it was. I don't think that's what he was trying to say. I think he was saying, and I think he was probably upfront with, unless he's just makes himself sound really good. It sounded like he was open with Stewie 2K.
It does.
It sounds like the organization was open with Stewie 2K, saying, hey, there's going to be people not liking this decision. It's up to you on where you want to take this. They're offering him the resources and they're being upfront with it. Don't be nervous. We're giving you a window. Don't go into this first tournament thinking, if I don't ace every round, I'm done. If we don't win this tournament, they're going to blame me for the loss.
Right.
And so, like I said, I think it was awesome that no-thing went out there and cleared the air on this, because I'm sure everybody, and even Stewie 2K was probably getting flack saying you don't deserve to be on Cloud9, which who's to say someone doesn't deserve to be on a team? It's like you said, we have to be a little bit more willing to let newcomers into the scene, despite what you might think of them beforehand. Speaking of newcomers and scene changing and everything like that, I want to discuss this article here before we get too far into the show, because it doesn't look like we're going to hit our 45-minute timer. And just looking at the time, it looks like we're about at 42, maybe 41.
Anyway, so let's get into Evo.
Sorry about that. So I want to discuss this article by Steven Jurek on the Daily Dot. He basically, like I said at the intro, he discussed Evo, the future of Evo, the present state of it, where possibilities and everything like that. He touched on basically, will it be what Evo was in the future? He touches on how Evo, for the most part, was always viewed as the fighting game tournament. It had all the fighting games there, or most of the ones that were relevant. If you won Evo, you were basically considered world champion of that game. But now that developers are starting to take notice in esports, that scene, that landscape is changing a little bit, especially with fighting games that I feel has a unique thing where the fans about them are crazy. They have crazy fans and a crazy following where no one watches them at all until tournaments happen, and then they'll pull 100,000 plus viewers. So it's a definitely unique genre of esports, if you will. And the developers are finally starting to take notice of what they have in front of them. Capcom, as you know, because we've covered it on the show even, Capcom has their own pro tour where, similar to professional tennis, you have certain points for certain events, and then certain events are worth more points, almost like a major and things like that. So that leads up all the way to the Capcom Cup. Everybody kind of has their own little thing now, or at least they're starting to have their own league. I believe Mortal Kombat has their own league. ESL has one. It's not sanctioned by the developers, but there's a pro league for Mortal Kombat now that's away from Evo. The only thing that really doesn't have its own league per se, and really no developer backing, is Super Smash Brothers.
Nintendo seems like they don't want it to be an esport. They've said something along the lines that they want it to be very accessible to people outside of the competitive.
Nintendo's very weird, and I've had my rant on Nintendo before, and I don't want to do it on the show because it's not what the show's about. But they're just so disconnected, I feel, with what the masses want.
It's almost like they stumbled onto Melee being as good as it is.
It really is. And yes, they acknowledge it, because if you look at sponsorships for some tournaments, you'll see Nintendo there. So they're sponsoring these tournaments, but they're not dishing out cash or anything like that. Like Capcom is dishing out the money for their tournaments. Nintendo is, like you said, almost, it's like they're acknowledging it, but they're not approving it. So it's a very weird relationship there. So this article kind of it touches base on where that relationship is going to land with Evo and the developers. One thing that I want to bring up, and then we can kind of get more into the discussion aspect of this article, is that kind of what we touched on a few episodes ago, where the developer with the tournament organizers, that relationship, on where that lands. I mean, you read the article. What did you think of it?
The article's great. It touches on a lot of the issues that the scary part for Evo is that all the other games have gone through this same thing with the developers starting to take a little more control on it. But with how important esports is to like the longevity of games now, like could you imagine if like League of Legends didn't have the LCS, or StarCraft didn't have, the StarCraft championship series? Just, they wouldn't be around anymore. People would have long forgotten about those games, right? So these developers have a very strong interest in marketing the game as an esport because it means your game's going to last. I don't think Capcom's going to stop releasing Street Fighter games if it doesn't make it as an esport, but they have a very big interest in making it an esport because that makes the game more popular.
And it's just now starting to really, though, be looked as an esport.
Right.
Before, it was just a fighting game and you had tournaments because that's what you've always done with fighting games. But now Capcom is really seeing the potential of it as an esport.
Right. So in Evo 2015, it says that there was 9 games, 7,000 participants, 12,000 attendees, 250,000 concurrent viewers at its peak, and it gave away more than $300,000 in prizes. The part about that, and these developers coming into it and realizing that it's such a big deal, is that $300,000 for spread over 9 games really isn't a lot in comparison to other esports. And that's because fighting games, and I absolutely love them for this, are so homegrown as far as like grassroots movements. Like we've talked about Smash, Street Fighter, same thing. They're so homegrown that the tournaments have had to stay small because it's like random groups of people that are putting on these huge tournaments, right? these developers can come in here with twice that much money in a single minor tournament and probably not blink an eye at it.
But one thing that he also brings up in this article that Steven Jurek brings up is the fact that another thing that's completely unique to the fighting genre in esports, I feel, where, and like I said, so each tournament you gain some points and everything like that, and it all leads up to the big cup, if that's how your tournament is set up. Like, we're using Capcom mainly for the example. Yeah. Well, Capcom sanctions EVO to be an official Capcom Cup qualifier. You can get points at EVO for Capcom Cup. So right there, that relationship's basically good. EVO gets the tournament that they want. Capcom uses EVO for their platform, and everybody's happy. There's really no butting heads there. The downside is, does Capcom all of a sudden get power hungry on that one, where they start, pushing their weight around? Because in here, he states that a tournament called East Coast Throwdown saw a 30% participant drop once Capcom announced this is not going to be a sanctioned Capcom Cup tournament. You will not get any points for it. So you have the positives of where Capcom is working with the big tournaments like EVO and some others out there to make it an official Capcom Cup tournament. And then you have the downside to where they could almost put a stranglehold on some of these smaller tournaments like that you said can't afford the big prize pools to compete.
And you can draw parallels to Counter-Strike, just with the Valve bans and Valve, or even the timer changes on the bomb plant that everybody seemed to hate, but nobody's going to not do it, because if you don't do it, Valve no longer supports your tournament. And if Valve's not supporting your tournament, you're not going to make it. That's doubly true in the fighting game scene. If the Capcom Cup becomes the premier tournament, which it will, because it's, by the developer, when that becomes the premier tournament, if you don't abide by Capcom's rules, you can, just like East Coast Throwdown, who had a mid tournament bracket change where they were floating players in the bracket, and that did not sit well with Capcom, which that's a whole nother shady topic to talk about later. But as soon as something like that happens and you become not sanctioned by Capcom, your tournament's pretty much done.
So my beef with this again is, why can't we all just get along as fans, as developers, as organizers of these tournaments? Why can't we find a middle ground where everybody is happy with? Which I feel like, though, this is as close as you're going to get for now. I think Capcom respects EVO for being what it is. I think fighting genres respect the homegrown aspect, and they don't want to mess with it. EVO has its own settings, and it's kind of the measuring stick when it comes to some of these fighting games. I think Capcom and other developers respect that. So I don't. EVO is not going to be diminished by any means. EVO is still going to be one of the biggest fighting game tournaments out there because of the variety of fighting games they have. It's in Vegas. It's 2 or 3 days long every year. So that's not going to be different. Now, will Capcom Cup obviously have more stress on it? Of course it will. Capcom is going to put more attention on their Super Bowl for their game. Why wouldn't they? That's business. Are they there, though, to weasel out all these small tournaments and EVO and things like that to where they turn more into a Capcom Cup qualifier than EVO? I don't see that. I don't see Capcom taking that approach.
I could see I could see EVO becoming a qualifier for it. I don't see EVO becoming smaller because of it, because of how many other games.
Right, but what I was saying is I don't think you'll see EVO in like the marquee, and then under EVO, Capcom Cup qualifier.
Oh no, yeah.
It's not going to be something like that. I think it's just what it is now. Your performance at EVO affects your Capcom points.
Right.
It will affect your league points for the Capcom Pro League. It's not going to all of a sudden, though, be so focused on Street Fighter because Capcom is paying for it. Which I know last year they were, fans didn't like the fact that they accepted money for sponsorships and things like that because it felt less homegrown. But when you get to that size,
I'm so
what are you
over
supposed
that.
to
I'm
do?
so over that. People shouldn't get paid in esports garbage. I don't care who it is.
Organizers or not.
Yeah, if somebody does the good work, pay them. Next.
So that's kind of the article in a nutshell. Really, he did a really good job on it.
It's really good. We will have the link in the show notes,
Yes,
of course.
we'll have the link in the show notes at tcr.gg. But again, I think Evo's coming up here in July. We're trying to get some player interviews for it, for some of the fighters that will be competing. I don't think Evo, though. I think, if anything, this is going to help tournaments. I don't think it's going to hurt the mom and pop tournaments. They will always have their place in the local brand because people like me who want to play in them are never making it to Evo. So I like the mom and pop tournaments. So I don't think Evo has anything to worry about. I think it will help all those other brands and everything like that if Capcom is smart and uses them as somewhat of a surrogate tournament for theirs. So I think that's where it's at. We can only see where the future takes it. Let's move on, though, to the micro. Kind of jumping off of that, I do have here, speaking of fighting games, but not actual sanctioned tournaments, ESL Mortal Kombat X Pro League wrapped up where Sonic Fox ended up winning it. Mortal Kombat X being my favorite of the fighting games. It pains me that Silver Fox wins it all the time because he wears that ridiculous hat that I want to punch off his stupid head.
How come
But
everybody that
nonetheless,
wins the fighting games that you like to
are
watch,
so
you just
weird.
can't? It's like
They're so weird. I don't get it, man. You have him, you have Zero. I don't get it. Maybe it's because it's just them I'm looking at the whole time. Like with Counter-Strike and Dota and all those other games, my attention is split between like 5 other people, where in fighting games, it's just Silver Fox and his stupid blue furry hat. But he ended up winning MKX, and he also won Evo 15. So clearly no one's going to argue that he's good at the game. I just don't like his hat. Moving on, what do you have?
I really respect your game, but I don't respect the
I
hat.
don't respect the hat. We can be friends, but the hat has to go.
Counter-Strike Go history was made over the last couple days. Team FaZe paid a whopping $700,000 for the G2 Counter-Strike team, which was reportedly purchased for somewhere in the 40,000 euros, which is a huge profit. Originally by G2, they ended up flipping the team for $700,000. The deal is $300,000 up front, and then 2 installments to be paid of $200,000.
Jesus.
That's a lot of freaking money.
That is a lot of money for G2, which FaZe is actually a big organization coming into the scene again. Buying out G2, which kind of sucks because I felt like that was kind of a show favorite. I felt like both of us were all on board the G2 hype even through the ups and downs.
So I misspoke. The original purchase of the team by G2 was for a low 6-figure transfer fee. They ended up actually, they were the ones who sold Scream to Titan for $150,000. So there's some money there, and then purchased Rain from LGB for the 40,000 euros.
Well, and then don't forget, what's that, bro? Fnatic.
Oh,
Dennis. Thank you. I was completely blanking. So
their best result was at DreamHack Clues, which is the one you were talking about, where we were all kind of on the G2 hype train, finishing.
So do we
top
not
4.
like the G2 organization anymore then? Because I feel like they did everybody on that CSGO team dirty. Like they literally sold all of them for profit.
That is kind of strange, isn't it? It's kind of like a slave trade almost.
It seems really wrong on how they did that. I don't know if the players give a rip. I'm sure they probably want out of that team if the team's so willing to sell them for that type of money. But you think after the organization sold Scream, they were like, hey, maybe we
can just sell these people?
we can just sell these guys and make some profit and get out of this business.
I will say from what I've seen following this news that the G2 owner, Carlos Rodriguez, a.k.a. I can't even pronounce this nickname, Ocelot, whatever, is not very well liked by people outside of I believe League of Legends.
which kind of makes sense if he just sold his entire team for profit there. Real quick here, you have Overwatch. That's returning in February. The beta is. I'm kind of interested to see that because the closer and closer that gets to release. Remember, this is the game that Blizzard is making that's kind of like TF2 if I had to compare it to anything. This is the team where professional teams quit their games to become pro at in the first wave of closed beta. You had like professional Battlefield 4 teams quit the games, professional TF2 teams quit the games to focus on a game that was in closed beta. So there's a lot riding on Overwatch becoming a successful esports game. I have no doubt that it will be because it's backed by Blizzard, which we have learned, if anything, will not let a game die.
Look at you, Heroes of the Storm.
And StarCraft, they will support them till death.
And that is not even a slight at all, because we were just playing Heroes of the Storm like yesterday. Yeah,
we love Heroes of the Storm.
But as an esport, Blizzard. The only reason that is still relevant is because Blizzard has an IV inserted into the vein of money.
Just automatic draft. Just keep pushing that into the Heroes of the Storm account. So that's going to be interesting to see. I played in the closed beta. I was the only one out of our group of friends that got into it. I was not that impressed. I hate the payload game types. They're stupid. But again, I only played with randoms and in a very team-oriented game. How's that going to work? It's not. So we'll see. I'll hold my official thoughts. What else? We have here the MLG Last Chance qualifiers. So this would literally be, so you had the qualifiers for the qualifiers. Well, this was another qualifier if you didn't qualify for the qualifier.
On paper it looked really good. Now it's just starting to get a little confusing.
It's a little ridiculous.
There was the MLG Minor Championship, and then now this is the Last Chance qualifier, which was for for teams that could not participate in the Minor Championship. And the reason there were teams that could not participate in the Minor Championship is because if you had a player on your roster that had participated in a major qualifier, I believe it was, they could not participate in the Minor Championship.
Okay. So this is almost expected to be higher tier teams.
It was.
Okay.
Until Games Academy won.
All right.
Yeah. Games Academy is, I hate to say tier 2 because there's really only 2 teams coming out of Brazil right now, but there's LG, who we've revoked underdog status from.
Who is on Game Academy that I would know? Who's on Games Academy that I would know? Because honestly, I don't follow them, believe it or not.
I don't think there's anybody you would know because they've only participated in one other serious tournament. It is Hen1, Lucas, Showtime. There's 2 O's there. Phelps and Bolts.
Okay, so I've heard a few. Again, a surprise, a surprise that they won. But the bigger story is not who won it; it's who did not qualify. That would be Optic Gaming. That would be one major organization, Optic Gaming, failed to qualify after their second attempt. You recall that they lost in the minor qualifier. And now they lost in the second chance qualifier, or the last chance, whatever they called it. So Optic Gaming will not be heading, right? You were looking at it before the show.
Right.
Is there any chance Optic Gaming is going to head to MLG Columbus?
They cannot make, unless they are invited later on, they have lost all of their qualifier chances.
If they are invited later on, I will give up all hope that I have in organizations bending the knee to bigger, what is a big name organization like Optic Gaming. And I said this beforehand, and I saw on CSGO Lounge that everyone bet against Winter Fox. CSGO Lounge is probably not the meter to use for public opinion, but in there, Optic Gaming was predicted to, it was like 80-20 Optic Gaming, and I knew I should have bet on Winter Fox, but I didn't because I gave up betting because I'm a better man for it. But I thought, if people really think Optic Gaming had that big of an advantage against Winter Fox, they are insane. Not saying Winter Fox is some like crazy team that should beat Optic Gaming, but for an 80-20 split,
Yeah, something. It's
Like-
gonna be a lot closer than that.
did we all forget 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when Optic Gaming was Conquest? Did that just all slip our minds that they had the one good tournament?
That's entertaining. There's no other way to put it. That's just entertaining.
I just, again, in the long run, I think Optic Gaming will work out because they have that backing of the big organization. And if anything, Call of Duty can win money for them, the CSGO side, if that's how it works. But seriously, like, you had 2 tries and you were supposed to be this big organization. And maybe I'm judging too harshly. Maybe I'm the one judging too harsh because you are Optic Gaming and other people are, I hear from the minority that think they should be good. I don't know. I'm just a voice.
It's a big name org doing little org things.
It really, really is. It is still Conquest. You can paint it however you want it.
We're gonna start referring to them as ex-Conquest instead of Optic.
Until they win. Maybe Optic Gaming will make that rule. So anyways, that about does it for episode 17 of The Center Ring. We appreciate you sticking along this long. If you have, there is a 99% chance no one is listening this long into the episode. But we definitely appreciate it if you did. Even if you skipped around, that's fine. It's not really designed for you to listen all the way through. It's for you to enjoy it. Converse with us on Twitter, at The Center Ring. I am at Pirate Mushroom. He is at Brand Ininu. Brand Ininu is him. You can add all of us. You can follow, tweet us, whatever you want. Also, we are on YouTube now. We just post basically the same thing you just heard on the audio version on YouTube a day later. But that does have that option there. You can subscribe there. Please do, even if you don't ever go on YouTube. Subscribe. It helps us get the word out for esports in a talk show format. There is a market for there. We just got to let people know we're around. So again, that about does it for The Center Ring, episode 17 in the books. Thank you so much for listening again, and we will see you next week when we discuss more esports.